The crystalline spires of Valdris Prime caught the light of 3 suns, casting rainbow fractals across the ceremonial amphitheater, where Princess Lirelei Starweaver stood in all her regal glory. Her skin held the distinctive silver-blue hue of the Eldari nobility, and her hair flowed like liquid starlight down her back, adorned with ceremonial braids that marked her as unwed royalty. The delicate bioluminescent markings along her arms pulsed with controlled irritation as she surveyed the assembled suitors. "Another disappointment," she muttered in perfect Galactic Standard, her melodic voice carrying just enough disdain to make several alien nobles shift uncomfortably. The latest challenger, a hulking Kronan warlord, lay unconscious at her feet, his ceremonial combat armor smoking from her precision energy strikes. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." Captain Marcus Webb of the Terran Colonial Marines watched from the observation deck, his weathered face creased in amusement. At 32, he'd seen enough interstellar politics to recognize a powder keg when he saw one, and Princess Lirelei was definitely explosive material. "That's the 7th suitor this month," observed Commander Sarah Chen, his second-in-command, her tactical implants glowing softly as she analyzed the combat data. "The Eldari princess is starting to gain quite a reputation across the sector." Marcus adjusted his dress uniform, a requirement for diplomatic functions, and checked his plasma sidearm out of habit. "Can't blame her. Look at these pompous fools. They think being able to afford a royal dowry makes them warrior material." The Eldari marriage trials were legendary throughout the galaxy. Any being who wished to court Princess Lirelei had to face her in single combat and prove themselves worthy. The challenge could be issued by anyone, regardless of species or social standing, but few were foolish enough to try. The princess was trained in 17 different combat disciplines and had never lost a match. "The human delegation requests an audience," announced Harold Vorthak, his insectoid features clicking with bureaucratic precision. Captain Marcus Webb of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. Lirelei's luminescent markings flared brighter. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 3 decades ago. Most established species viewed them as primitive upstarts, useful only as shock troops in the ongoing war against the Devourers. "A human?" she asked, her voice carrying across the amphitheater. "How unexpected." Marcus descended the marble steps, his combat boots echoing in the sudden silence. Every eye in the amphitheater followed his progress, dozens of alien species represented in the diplomatic corps, all waiting to see how this would unfold. "Your Highness," Marcus said, offering a respectful bow that was neither too deep nor too shallow. His diplomatic training kicked in automatically. "I bring greetings from the Terran Colonial Alliance and Admiral Reeves of the 5th Fleet." Lirelei studied him with eyes that held the deep purple of nebulae. Unlike the other suitors who had strutted and preened, this human carried himself with quiet confidence. His uniform bore the scars of real combat, plasma burns carefully repaired, fabric worn smooth at the weapon grips. This was a soldier, not a diplomat playing at war. "Captain Webb," she acknowledged, her formal tone betraying nothing. "I assume you're here to discuss the joint military exercises between our fleets? The Devourer threat requires continued cooperation." "Actually, Your Highness," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to do. "I'm here to issue a challenge." The amphitheater erupted in shocked murmurs. Several alien nobles began making rapid calculations on their data pads. The betting pools for royal challenges were always active, but no one had given a human serious consideration. Lirelei's bioluminescent markings pulsed in what Marcus had learned was the Eldari equivalent of raised eyebrows. "A challenge? You wish to face me in combat for the right to court me?" "I do, Your Highness." She laughed, a sound like crystal chimes in a gentle breeze. "Captain, you do realize that my previous suitors included a Throkan gladiator champion, a Zephyrian stormcaller, and a Meknari battle construct? Beings who have dedicated their entire existence to warfare?" Marcus nodded. "I'm aware of your reputation, Your Highness. I've studied the combat recordings. And yet you still wish to proceed?" Her voice held genuine curiosity now. Why? It was a fair question, and one Marcus had been asking himself for weeks. The truth was complicated. Part strategic necessity, part personal fascination, and part sheer stubborn human pride. Because someone needs to, he said simply. The Devourer fleets are massing in the Outer Rim. Our species need to be united, not divided by politics and pride. An alliance between Earth and Valdris would send a message that humanity is ready to stand as equals in the galactic community. Lyrale's expression shifted subtly. This human wasn't speaking of love or desire, like the others. He was talking about duty, about the greater good. It was refreshing, in a way that made her pulse quicken despite herself. You speak of political necessity, she said, circling him slowly. Marcus stood perfectly still, letting her assess him. But the marriage trials are not about politics, Captain. They are about finding a mate worthy of continuing the Starweaver bloodline. A partner who can stand beside me in battle and in life. I understand, Your Highness. Do you? She stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he could see the intricate patterns in her bioluminescent markings. The trials are not to first blood, Captain. They are to submission or incapacitation. I have put 17 suitors in medical bays this year alone. Marcus met her gaze steadily. I've been in a few medical bays myself, Your Highness. Comes with the territory. For a moment, something flickered in her purple eyes. Approval? Amusement? Before the formal mask slipped back into place. Very well, Captain Webb. I accept your challenge. She turned to address the amphitheater. The trial will commence at dawn tomorrow. Combat will be unrestricted, save for no weapons of mass destruction and no outside interference. Victory conditions are submission, incapacitation, or death, though I do try to avoid the latter. The crowd buzzed with excitement. A human challenging the Eldari princess was unprecedented. Most were already planning their bets against him. Your Highness, Marcus said as she began to turn away. One question. If I may? She paused. Yes? What happens if I win? Her laugh was genuine this time, less musical and more human. Captain, you are either the bravest human I've ever met, or the most foolish. Perhaps both. She studied his face for a long moment. If you win, then according to tradition, you earn the right to court me. A formal courtship period during which I will determine if you are truly worthy to be my consort. And if I lose? Then you'll spend several weeks in our medical bay, assuming you survive, and provide entertainment for the court. Her expression grew more serious. Captain, I respect your courage, but I feel obligated to warn you. I have never lost. Not once. I am trained in combat forms your species has never encountered, enhanced with biomodifications that push the limits of Eldari physiology. I can move faster than your reflexes can track, hit harder than your bones can withstand. Marcus nodded. I appreciate the warning, Your Highness. I'll see you at dawn. As he turned to leave, he heard her call after him. Captain, bring medical. Insurance. Later that evening, Marcus sat in his quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel Endeavor, reviewing tactical data with his team. Commander Chen had requisitioned every available file on Eldari combat techniques, while his senior sergeant, Rodriguez, was running stress tests on various armor configurations. You're insane, sir, Rodriguez said bluntly, not looking up from his work. Respectfully insane, but still insane. The princess has superhuman speed, strength, and reflexes, Chen added, projecting holographic displays of previous combat matches. Watch this. She moves like lightning. Those Throkon gladiators are some of the toughest warriors in the galaxy, and she dismantled them without breaking a sweat. Marcus studied the recordings. Lyralai fought with an elegant brutality that was mesmerizing to watch. Her movements flowed like a deadly dance, each strike precise and devastating. She wielded energy weapons with casual mastery, and could apparently generate bioelectric discharges from her hands. What about weaknesses? He asked. That's the problem, sir. We can't find any obvious ones. She's faster than humans, stronger than humans, more durable than humans. Her reaction times are off the charts. The only thing we have in our favor is that she's never fought a human before. She's also never fought someone fighting for something other than glory or conquest, Marcus mused, studying her fighting style. There was something almost performative about it, like she was showing off rather than truly trying to win efficiently. "Sir," Chen said carefully. "Permission to speak freely?" "Always." "Why are you really doing this? And don't give me the political unity speech. You've turned down 3 promotions and 2 Earthside assignments to stay out here. There's something personal in this." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "You ever meet someone and just know that they're going to change your life?" "Can't say I have, sir. I watched her fight today. Really watched her. She's not just going through the motions, Chen. She's searching, looking for something in each opponent that she's not finding." He pulled up another combat recording. "Look at her eyes during the matches. She's not angry or aggressive. She's disappointed." Rodriguez snorted. "Maybe she's disappointed they're all weaklings compared to her." "No," Marcus said slowly, pieces clicking together in his mind. "She's disappointed they're not challenging her the right way. They're all trying to overpower her, to beat her at her own game. But that's not what she wants." "What does she want?" Chen asked. Marcus smiled grimly. "She wants someone who'll make her work for it. Someone who'll force her to be better than she is. And you think you can do that? I think I'm the only one stupid enough to try." The next morning dawned clear and bright, all 3 suns rising in sequence to bathe the amphitheater in brilliant light. Word had spread throughout the diplomatic quarter, and the viewing galleries were packed with representatives from dozens of species. The betting pools had reached astronomical proportions, with odds running heavily against the human. Princess Lyra entered the arena wearing form-fitting combat armor that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. The material shifted and flowed, with her movements providing protection while enhancing her natural grace. Her hair was bound in a warrior's knot, and her bioluminescent markings pulsed with anticipation. Marcus entered from the opposite gate, wearing standard colonial marine combat armor. Functional ceramic plating over a reactive weave bodysuit. His helmet was clipped to his belt, leaving his face exposed. He carried no visible weapons, having opted for a minimal loadout strategy. "You look nervous, Captain," Lyra called across the arena floor. "Just focused, Your Highness," he replied, beginning his pre-combat checks. The arena was roughly circular, about 50 meters in diameter, with various obstacles and elevation changes to make combat more interesting. "Herald Vorthak will oversee the match," she continued, moving to her starting position. "Are you ready? To begin?" Marcus took a deep breath, centering himself. 3 decades of military training had taught him that victory rarely went to the strongest or fastest fighter. It went to the smartest. "Ready, Your Highness." "Begin." Herald Vorthak's amplified voice echoed through the amphitheater. Lyra moved like liquid lightning, closing the distance between them in a blur of motion that would have been invisible to unaugmented human eyes. Her first strike, a palm thrust aimed at his solar plexus, should have ended the fight immediately. Instead, Marcus wasn't there. He had anticipated her opening move based on her previous fights and rolled aside at the last possible moment, her strike passing through empty air. The crowd gasped as the human came up in a defensive crouch, having avoided what should have been a finishing blow. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. Interesting. She pressed her attack, unleashing a devastating combination that had overwhelmed every previous opponent. But Marcus seemed to know exactly where she was going to strike, moving just enough to avoid her attacks while staying close enough to prevent her from resetting her position. "You studied my fights," she said, her voice carrying a note of approval, as she launched a spinning kick that he ducked under. "Every one of them," Marcus replied, grabbing her extended leg and using her own momentum to send her stumbling. "You always open with the palm strike, always." For the first time in years, Lyra found herself off balance. This human wasn't trying to match her speed or strength. He was predicting her moves, using her own patterns against her. She recovered quickly, bioelectric energy crackling around her hands as she prepared to unleash her signature finishing move. But as she raised her arms, Marcus did something completely unexpected. He stepped directly into her attack range and smiled. "Your Highness," he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. "You're holding back." The energy discharge never came. Lyra stared at him, her purple eyes wide with surprise. "What did you say?" "You're holding back," Marcus repeated, his voice gentle but firm. "You have been with every opponent. You could have ended this fight in the first 10 seconds, but you didn't. Just like you could have ended all the others much faster than you did. The amphitheater had gone silent, sensing that something fundamental had shifted in the combat. "You're analyzing me," Lyrelei said, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with what Marcus was beginning to recognize as intense curiosity. "I'm trying to understand you," he corrected. "Every fighter has tells, patterns, weaknesses. But you're creating your own weaknesses, deliberately limiting yourself to make the fights more interesting." She lowered her hands, the energy discharge dissipating. "And why would I do that?" Marcus took a half-step closer, maintaining eye contact. "Because you're bored. Because none of them have given you what you really want. Which is a real challenge. Someone who sees you as more than just a prize to be won or a title to be claimed." He spread his arms slightly, making himself vulnerable. "Someone who's willing to lose everything just to show you that you're worth fighting for properly." For a long moment, they stood facing each other in the center of the arena, the crowd, holding its collective breath. Lyrelei's expression was unreadable, her markings cycling through colors Marcus didn't recognize. Then she attacked. But this time was different. This time she moved with her full speed, full power, holding nothing back. Marcus barely managed to avoid the first strike. The second caught him in the ribs and sent him flying across the arena floor. He rolled with the impact, coming up bleeding, but still mobile. "Better," he gasped, wiping blood from his mouth. "Much better." Lyrelei was already moving again, but now Marcus could see something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Genuine engagement. For the first time in years, she was fighting someone who had demanded her best. The real battle was just beginning. The arena floor cracked beneath Lyrelei's feet as she launched herself forward with devastating force. This time, there was no elegant dance, no theatrical flourishes, just pure, lethal efficiency. Her bioelectric energy crackled around her like contained lightning, turning her into a living weapon that moved faster than most beings could even perceive. Marcus threw himself sideways, feeling the air displacement as her strike passed close, enough to singe his armor. The impact of her fist against the arena wall behind him sent spiderweb fractures racing through the reinforced stone. If that had connected with his chest, the fight would have been over. "Now we're talking," he muttered, rolling to his feet and immediately diving behind one of the arena's decorative pillars as another energy-charged attack reduced his previous position to smoking rubble. The crowd was on its feet now, their earlier, dismissive chatter replaced by stunned silence. Even the most experienced warriors among the spectators had never seen Princess Lyrelei fight like this. Unrestrained, focused, deadly. "You wanted to see me at full strength, Captain." Her voice, carried across the arena, somehow both melodic and terrifying. "I hope you're prepared for the consequences." Marcus peered around the pillar, his tactical mind racing. Standard combat doctrine was useless here. He was facing an opponent who could move 3 times faster than him, hit 10 times harder, and had energy-based attacks that could punch through his armor like tissue paper. Everything he'd learned in 30 years of warfare told him this was impossible, which meant he needed to stop fighting like a soldier and start thinking like a human. "You know what the difference is between us, Your Highness," he called out, watching her bioluminescent markings pulse as she tracked his position. "You're fighting to win. I'm fighting to understand." She paused, just for a fraction of a second, and Marcus moved. Not away from her, but in a direction that made no tactical sense, directly toward the center of the arena where he'd be exposed from all angles. "Understand what?" Lyrelei demanded, pursuing him with fluid grace. "Why you've been alone for so long," Marcus replied, stopping in the open ground and turning to face her. "Why every suitor disappoints you. Why you're more interested in what I'm going to do next than you are in actually winning this fight." The words hit her like a physical blow. For just an instant, her perfect combat composure wavered, and Marcus saw something vulnerable beneath the warrior's mask. That instant cost him. Lyrelei's next attack was a blur of motion that caught him, across the torso, sending him tumbling across the arena floor. Pain exploded through his ribs. Definitely cracked, possibly broken. His armor's medical systems immediately flooded his bloodstream with combat stimulants and pain suppressors. But he could taste blood. "You presume too much, human," she said, stalking toward him as he struggled to his feet. But her bioluminescent markings were flickering now, cycling through patterns he hadn't seen in any of the combat recordings. Marcus spat blood and grinned. "Do I? Then explain why you're not pressing your advantage. You could have finished me with that last hit, but you pulled back at the last second. I did no such thing. Your bioluminescent patterns say otherwise." Marcus gestured toward her arms, where the living light beneath her skin was pulsing in rapid, chaotic sequences. "I may not speak Eldari biology, but I can read body language. You're conflicted." For the first time in the match, Lyrelei actually stopped moving. "You've been studying our physiological responses?" "I've been studying you," Marcus corrected, using the momentary pause to assess his injuries. 3 weeks of combat recordings, cultural briefings, diplomatic reports. Did you know you unconsciously mirror the bioluminescent patterns of anyone you're genuinely listening to? It only happens when someone says something that actually interests you. Lyrelei glanced down at her arms, where the patterns were indeed shifting in ways she hadn't consciously controlled. "That's impossible. Eldari nobility train from childhood to control our luminescence." "Maybe that's the problem," Marcus suggested, slowly circling to keep some distance between them. "Maybe you've been controlling yourself for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to react honestly to someone." The observation struck deeper than any physical blow could have. Lyrelei's entire life had been about control, controlling her emotions, her responses, her very biology in service to duty and tradition. The idea that this human could see through centuries of conditioning with just 3 weeks of observation was both infuriating and liberating. "You're trying to psychoanalyze me in the middle of combat," she said. But there was no anger in her voice. If anything, she sounded impressed. "I'm trying to figure out why the most powerful warrior I've ever met keeps choosing opponents who can't possibly challenge her," Marcus replied. "What are you really looking for, Lyrelei?" The use of her given name, without title or formality, sent a shock through both of them. In Eldari culture, such familiarity was reserved for the closest of bonds, family, lovers, battle partners who had shared blood and victory. "You cannot," she began, then stopped. Her bioluminescent markings had synchronized with something, and it took her a moment to realize what. Marcus's heartbeat. Somehow, her unconscious biological responses were matching the rhythm of his pulse. "I'm looking for someone who sees me," she said quietly, the words escaping before she could stop them. "Not the princess, not the warrior, not the political alliance. Me." Marcus nodded, understanding flooding through him. "And every suitor who's come before has been fighting the legend, not the woman." Yes. The admission was barely a whisper. "Well," Marcus said, straightening up despite his injuries, "I've got bad news for you, Your Highness. I don't give a damn about legends." He moved then, not with superhuman speed or impossible strength, but with the calculated precision of someone who had spent decades learning how to win fights he had no business surviving. Instead of trying to match her physical capabilities, he used the arena itself. Angles, leverage, momentum. As Lyrelei moved to intercept what looked like an attack, Marcus dropped low and swept her legs. Not hard enough to actually trip someone, with her reflexes, but enough to force her to adjust her balance. In that split second of adjustment, he was inside her guard. Too close for her energy attacks, too close for her superior reach to matter. "Clever," she admitted, even as she twisted away from his follow-up strike. But not clever enough. She spun with inhuman grace, her elbow aimed at his temple with enough force to drop a Kronan battle lord. Marcus couldn't dodge. He was committed to his attack. Instead, he did something that violated every combat instinct he possessed. He caught her elbow. Not blocked it, not deflected it. Caught it, bare-handed, absorbing the full impact through his arm and shoulder. The force drove him to one knee, and he felt something tear in his shoulder, but he held on. "Impossible," Lyrelei breathed. No unenhanced human should have been able to withstand that impact. "Adrenaline," Marcus gasped, blood running from his nose. "And really good drugs in my armor's medical system. Plus 30 years of being too stubborn to know when I'm beaten." They were locked together now, her strength against his leverage, her speed neutralized by proximity. For the first time in the fight, They were actually matched. "This is insane," she said. But her bioluminescent markings were pulsing with something that looked almost like joy? "Completely," Marcus agreed. "But you're smiling." She was. For the first time in years of combat trials, Princess Lyrily Starweaver was genuinely smiling in the middle of a fight. Not the cold satisfaction of easy victory, but the wild joy of being truly challenged. "You're going to lose," she pointed out, though she made no immediate move to break their deadlock. "Probably," Marcus admitted. "But I'm going to make you work for it." "Why?" The question carried the weight of years of disappointment, of victories that felt hollow because they came too easily. Marcus met her eyes, and for a moment, the pain from his injuries faded. "Because you deserve someone who'll give you their absolute best. Not because they want to win you, but because you're worth it." The words hung in the air between them, carrying more weight than any physical blow. Lyrily stared at him, her purple eyes wide with something she hadn't felt in decades, genuine surprise. "You're not trying to prove you're worthy of me," she realized. "No," Marcus said simply. "I'm trying to prove you're worthy of someone who'll actually fight for you." The philosophical implications of that statement hit her like a plasma blast. Every suitor before had approached the trials as a test of their own worth, a chance to prove they deserved her. But this human had turned the entire concept on its head. He was fighting to prove that she deserved better than what she'd been getting. It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done for her. "You magnificent, impossible man," she whispered, and then she kissed him. Right there, in the middle of combat, with half the galaxy's diplomatic corps watching, Princess Lyrily pressed her lips to Marcus's in a kiss that sent bioelectric sparks dancing between them. The crowd gasped, several alien dignitaries fainted, and the betting pools immediately crashed as everyone tried to figure out what was happening. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard for reasons that had nothing to do with physical exertion. "That was unexpected," Marcus said, his voice slightly hoarse. "I'm an unexpected person," Lyrily replied, her bioluminescent markings now pulsing in perfect synchronization with his heartbeat. "The question is, what happens now?" Marcus glanced around the arena, suddenly aware that thousands of beings were staring at them in shock. "Well, technically, the fight isn't over yet." "No," she agreed, stepping back slightly but not breaking. Their eye contact. "It isn't. And technically, you haven't submitted or been incapacitated. Nor have you. So we could keep fighting." "We could." Lyrile's smile was radiant. Or? "We could acknowledge that we've both gotten what we came here for," she said, extending her hand to him. "I've found someone who sees me as I am, and you've proven that humans can stand as equals with any species in the galaxy." Marcus looked at her outstretched hand, then at the expectant crowd, then back at her face. In her eyes, he saw not the cold perfection of alien nobility, but warmth, intelligence, and something that might have been the beginning of love. "Princess Lyrily Starweaver," he said formally, taking her hand. "I yield this combat to you." The amphitheater exploded in chaos. Beings were shouting in dozens of languages, trying to understand what had just happened. A human had challenged the unbeatable Eldari princess, fought her to a standstill, and then surrendered while kissing her. But Lyrily wasn't done with surprises. "Herald Vorthak," she called out, her voice carrying clearly over the din. "Let it be recorded that Captain Marcus Webb has satisfied the combat requirements of the marriage trial." "Your Highness," the herald stammered. "But he yielded." "He yielded after proving himself worthy," she interrupted, her royal authority cutting through all objections. "The trial is not about victory, Herald. It is about finding a mate who can stand beside me as an equal. Captain Webb has demonstrated that he can match me in combat, in courage, and in understanding. The trial is concluded." She turned to face Marcus, who was still trying to process what had just happened. "Captain Marcus Webb of the Terran Colonial Marines," she said formally, "I hereby accept your suit and invite you to begin formal courtship proceedings." Marcus blinked. "Just like that?" "Just like that," she confirmed, then leaned closer to whisper, "Though I should warn you, Eldari courtship rituals make the marriage trial look simple. Despite his injuries, despite the chaos around them, despite the fact that he'd just committed himself to courting an alien princess whose culture he barely understood, Marcus found himself laughing. "Your Highness," he said, "I wouldn't have it any other way." As medical teams rushed onto the arena floor and diplomatic personnel scrambled to understand the implications of what had just occurred, Marcus and Lyrelai stood together in the center of it all, hands clasped, bioluminescent patterns dancing between them like visible proof of a connection that transcended species. The real adventure, they both realized, was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since the trial that had shaken the foundations of interstellar diplomacy. Marcus sat in the ornate receiving chamber of the Starweaver Palace, trying not to fidget in the formal Eldari courtship robes that had been specially tailored for his human physiology. The fabric seemed to shimmer with its own internal light, responding to his emotional state in ways that made poker faces impossible. "The 7th test, Captain Webb," announced matriarch Selenai, Lyrelai's formidable grandmother, and the head of the Starweaver clan. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed with ancient authority as she consulted the ceremonial scroll. The trial of resonance. Marcus had survived 6 impossible challenges over the past weeks. Tests of wisdom, strength, cultural knowledge, tactical thinking, artistic expression, and emotional intelligence. Each had been designed to break him, to prove that no alien could truly understand the depths of Eldari civilization. Each time, he had found ways to not just endure, but to surprise even himself. "What exactly does this trial involve?" he asked, though experience had taught him that advanced knowledge was rarely provided. "You must achieve perfect bioluminescent synchronization with Princess Lyrelai," Selenai explained, her tone suggesting this was as impossible as it sounded. "For 1 full solar cycle, your life forces must align completely. No Eldari has ever achieved this with an off-worlder." Lyrelai entered the chamber at that moment, and Marcus felt his breath catch as it had every time he'd seen her over the past weeks. She wore the traditional garments of an Eldari bride candidate, flowing robes that seemed to be cut from captured starlight itself. Her silver hair was adorned with crystalline ornaments that chimed softly as she moved, and her bioluminescent markings were more vibrant than he'd ever seen them. "Grandmother," she said respectfully, though Marcus caught the subtle, rebellious undertone that had become familiar. "Are you certain this trial is necessary? Captain Webb has already proven himself 7 times over. The resonance trial has been part of our courtship traditions for 3,000 years, Selenai replied firmly. "It ensures that prospective mates are truly compatible at the deepest biological level. Without it, any union would be incomplete." Marcus stood as Lyrelai approached, their informal connection immediately apparent as his ceremonial robes began to pulse in rhythm with her markings. Over the weeks, this unconscious synchronization had become stronger, much to the amazement of Eldari scholars who had been studying the phenomenon. "What she's not telling you," Lyrelai murmured quietly, "is that the trial has a 97% failure rate among our own people. Cross-species resonance has never been achieved. So, no pressure," Marcus replied with a wry smile that made her luminescence flicker with amusement. The trial chamber was a marvel of Eldari biotechnology, a spherical room whose walls pulsed with living light, designed to amplify and measure the subtle energy fields that all Eldari naturally generated. As they entered, Marcus felt a tingling sensation across his skin, as if the very air was charged with potential. "The parameters are simple," Selenai explained, taking her place at the observation station. "You will remain in physical contact for 24 hours while the chamber measures your bioelectrical resonance. Perfect synchronization requires that your life forces align completely. Heartbeat, brainwave patterns, cellular regeneration, even quantum biofield fluctuations. If you achieve this, the union will be blessed by our ancestors and recognized by all Eldari." "And if we don't?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. "Then the courtship is ended, and Princess Lyrelai must choose from among the traditional suitors," Selenai said with finality. Marcus looked at Lyrelai, seeing his own determination reflected in her purple eyes. They had come too far to fail now. "We're ready," they said simultaneously, then laughed at their unconscious coordination. The chamber sealed with a soft chime, leaving them alone in the gently pulsing sphere. Monitoring devices hummed quietly as they began recording baseline measurements. So, Marcus said, settling onto the curved floor beside Lyrelai. 24 hours of forced intimacy. Any suggestions on how to pass the time? We could start with honesty, she suggested, taking his hand. Immediately, both their bioluminescent patterns, his robes, her skin, began to pulse in complementary rhythms. There are things about my culture, my biology, that you still don't understand. Such as. Lyrelai was quiet for a moment. Her markings, cycling through patterns that Marcus had learned, indicated deep thought. The resonance trial isn't just about compatibility, Marcus. It's about permanence. If we achieve true synchronization, it will bind us on a quantum level. We'll share emotions, sensations, even thoughts to some degree. It's beautiful, but it's also irreversible. Marcus considered this, watching the interplay of light between them. You're asking if I'm ready to spend the rest of my life connected to you. Yes. And I'm also telling you that I've never wanted anything more, which terrifies me. Her admission was soft, vulnerable. I've spent centuries training to rule alone, to need no one. But you make me want to be part of something greater. Join. The club, Marcus said, squeezing her hand. 3 weeks ago, I was a career soldier who'd convinced himself that duty was enough. Now I'm sitting in an alien biochamber contemplating quantum soul bonding with the most incredible woman in the galaxy. Their biopatterns pulsed brighter, and the chamber's monitoring systems chimed softly. First-level synchronization achieved. Tell me about your world, Lyrelai said, shifting closer until she was leaning against his shoulder. Not the political briefings or cultural summaries. Tell me about home. Marcus described Earth as he'd never described it before. Not as a military strategic asset or diplomatic entity, but as a living world full of beauty and wonder. He told her about summer thunderstorms and winter snow, about the smell of coffee in the morning and the sound of children laughing in playgrounds. He spoke of music that could make you weep and food that connected you to generations of tradition. In return, Lyrelai painted pictures with words of Valdris Prime that went far, beyond the crystalline spires and formal gardens. She described the song forests where the trees themselves generated harmonious frequencies. The mirror seas that reflected not just light, but emotions. The ancient libraries where knowledge was stored in living crystal matrices that grew and evolved over millennia. As they shared these intimate portraits of their worlds, the chamber's systems recorded deeper levels of synchronization. Their heartbeats matched, their breathing aligned, their brainwave patterns began to overlap in ways that should have been impossible between different species. The scholars are going to be studying us for decades, Lyrelai observed, watching the readouts with fascination. Good thing we're both exhibitionists, Marcus replied, making her laugh, a sound that sent cascades of harmonious light through both their biopatterns. Hours passed as they talked, shared memories, dreams, fears, and hopes. Marcus told her about the nightmares that came with command, the weight of decisions that cost lives, the loneliness of responsibility. Lyrelai spoke of the crushing expectations of royalty, the isolation of being genetically enhanced beyond normal Eldari limits, the fear that she would never find someone who could see past her power to the person beneath. As night fell, marked by the chamber's gentle dimming, they lay curled together, their bioluminescence creating a constellation of shared light in the darkness. The monitoring systems hummed constantly now, recording synchronization levels that were approaching theoretical maximums. Marcus, Lyrelai whispered, her voice barely audible. I can feel your thoughts. He could feel it too. A gentle presence, at the edge of his consciousness, warm and welcoming and fundamentally Lyrelai. It should have been intrusive, frightening. Instead, it felt like coming home. Is this what the resonance feels like? He asked. This is beyond resonance, she breathed, wonder in her voice. This is true quantum entanglement. Our consciousness are beginning to merge. The implications were staggering. They weren't just achieving compatibility. They were becoming something new, a hybrid entity that was both fully human and fully Eldari, while being something greater than either. Are you afraid? She asked. Marcus considered the question seriously. Was he afraid of losing his individual identity? Of becoming something unknown? Of binding himself permanently to an alien being whose world he barely understood? No, he realized, with surprise. I'm not. Are you? I should be, Lirelei admitted. But all I feel is completion. Like I've been missing half of myself my entire life, and just now found it. As dawn approached, their synchronization reached levels that set off alarms in the monitoring station. Outside the chamber, Matriarch Selenai watched in amazement as readings climbed far beyond anything in Eldari historical records. Impossible, she murmured to the assembled scholars. They're not just synchronized, they're evolving, creating something entirely new. Inside the chamber, Marcus and Lirelei had moved beyond words. They communicated through pure emotion and thought, their bioluminescence creating patterns of stunning beauty that had never been seen before. They were still distinctly themselves, Marcus's human determination and pragmatism balanced by Lirelei's Eldari wisdom and grace. But they were also something more. As the trial period ended and the chamber opened, they remained intertwined, their shared glow gradually fading to levels that wouldn't blind observers. But the connection remained, permanent, unbreakable, beautiful. Well? Selenai asked, though the readings had already told her everything she needed to know. Marcus and Lirelei stood together, moving in perfect harmony, their biopatterns still gently synchronized. We are bonded, Lirelei announced, though her voice carried harmonics that hadn't been there before. Not just Eldari to human, but consciousness to consciousness. The implications for both our species, Selenai began, will be worked out. Later, Marcus interrupted gently but firmly. Right now, I have a wedding to plan with my wife. Wife? Selenai's bioluminescence flared with shock. The resonance trial is just the final courtship test. Grandmother, Lirelei said, her voice carrying new authority that seemed to resonate from a deeper place than individual will. The bonding we've achieved transcends your ceremonies. We are already married in ways your traditions never anticipated. She was right. The quantum entanglement they'd achieved had created a connection more intimate and permanent than any ceremonial vows could establish. They were bound now at the most fundamental level of existence. Over the following weeks, as news of their unprecedented bonding spread throughout the galaxy, Marcus and Lirelei found themselves at the center of a transformation that neither had anticipated. Human and Eldari scientists worked together to understand the phenomenon, while diplomats negotiated the political implications of a union that literally created a new form of consciousness. But for Marcus and Lirelei, the cosmic significance faded beside simpler joys. They discovered that their bond allowed them to share not just thoughts and emotions, but experiences. He could feel the universe through her enhanced Eldari senses, while she experienced human creativity and adaptability in ways that amazed her. Their first dance as a bonded pair took place in the palace gardens under 3 moons, with no audience save the song trees whose harmonious frequencies matched their synchronized bioluminescence. As they moved together, Marcus realized that he had found something he hadn't even known he was searching for. Not just love, but completion. No regrets? Lirelei asked as they swayed to music only they could hear. Only one, Marcus replied, pulling her closer. Which is? That it took me 32 years to find you. Her laughter created patterns of light that danced around them like visible joy, and Marcus knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, political, cultural, or cosmic, they would face them together. After all, he had won his impossible bride not through strength or cunning, but by doing something no one else had thought to try. He had seen her not as a prize to be claimed, but as a person to be cherished, and that, as it turned out, had made all the difference. The end. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.